Today on Seahawks Forever, tough break for the Seahawks, literally. Wide receiver Jaxon Smith-Njigba, a broken wrist, having surgery today in Philadelphia. We'll know more after the surgery. But in the meantime, I'll tell you what we do know. I'll tell you what the best and worst case scenario is and who steps up in the meantime. Here we go.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
ESPN's Adam Schefter broke the news early this morning. Here is the tweet. Seahawks first-round draft pick Jaxon Smith-Njigba is undergoing wrist surgery today in Philadelphia, but still could have a chance to be ready for the start of the regular season. Per sources, surgery will determine how long he will miss. He hurt his wrist Saturday night versus Dallas. In fact, he hurt it on that 48-yard long pass from Drew Lock down to the 1-yard line, landed hard against the turf at the 1, and broke a bone in his left wrist. Njigba taken with the 20th pick overall by the Seahawks this year, the second of 2 first-round draft picks for them, had 6 catches for 83 yards in Seattle's first 2 preseason games. And from the day he stepped on the field, has been one of the best players in camp. It's been a long time since we've had a rookie step onto the field for the Seahawks and just look like he was ready to go from the get-go and was going to play a huge role in this offense. Still will at a certain point. And we'll get into those possibilities. And again, we'll know more later today. Once we do, certainly follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. We can react to it there. If the news is big, and by big, I would mean bad, I'll try to go live later tonight and react to that as well as we get more details. But first of all, hit like on the YouTube channel, subscribe to the show on YouTube and also on whatever audio podcast app you use. And as I mentioned before, follow me at Seahawks Forever. And to subscribe, just hit that little notification down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen as you're looking at it. Okay. So a couple of doctors weighed in on Twitter. This was the most extensive diagnosis or, I guess, potential projection. And he gave a range. This is Dr. Jesse Morse at Dr. Jesse Morse. He is a sports medicine physician. He says initial thoughts on Seahawks Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Wrist fracture, no details. So he goes on to say that wrists are complicated, hopefully not a ligament tear. There are no reports that ligaments are involved at this point. But again, it does say we'll know more after surgery, and that'll determine the outcome. Ligaments take longer to recover from. He says best case scenario, it's a small fracture, an avulsion fracture, he calls it. He has quick surgery, and he's ready for week 1. As it said in Adam Schefter's tweet, that is a possibility. Obviously, that's the best case scenario. More realistic, this is where it gets a little foreboding. More realistic is a small fracture and a plate screw insertion. In that case, he's out for 4 to 6 weeks. If complicated or ligament repair necessary, could be much longer. Likely being repaired at Rothman or Philly Hand Center. If that's the case, 6 to 8 weeks for full contact. He says, wide receivers need their hands, so think 2 months, in which case he'd be a candidate for the PUP list. Likely to impact the first 4 to 6 games. So that's a little less optimistic than the Schefter tweet, which just mentioned could be back for week 1. Here we have a sports medicine physician saying more realistic is that a plate or screw will need to be inserted. That would be bad, right? But here's the good news. Even if it comes to that, another doctor weighed in, Wade Crist. He's a board-certified orthopedic specialist and a physical therapist at Fantasy Injury T on Twitter. Tough one for the rookie. Hopefully he can return soon. This should not impact his production when he returns and is not a concern for long-term health. The good news here, if there are no ligaments involved, if a plate or screw does not need to be inserted, is we have this little extra time to work with, right? We have week 0 in the preseason. I don't know how much he would have played Saturday morning anyway. And then there's 2 full weeks until the opener on September 10th. So we have 3 weeks here. And again, we'll know more once the surgery is done. So what do they do in the meantime? Because now, I mean, that wide receiver group, if it was fully healthy, I don't think there would be a lot of concern here at all. Seahawks have a lot of options. But that position group is a little bit of a mash unit right now. Next up, obviously, would be D. Eskridge, but he has the 6-game suspension he's dealing with, and he also hurt his knee, right? So he would have been out anyway. Next man up after that, most likely would be Derek Young. He's battling a groin thing, but he played against the Cowboys on Saturday. He played poorly. Didn't catch any of his 4 targets, and 2 of them were flat-out drops. Next up after that, Cody Thompson has a little bit of a shoulder thing, but played against Dallas, had a catch, and if he's healthy, he's a guy that's going to contribute. Now, as far as slot guys go, Cade Johnson would very likely be the next man up. Was having a really great OTA season and training camp, the former undrafted free agent out of South Dakota State. But he's in. Remember that Minnesota game? I think it was on a kick return. Had to be carried off the field. He's still in concussion protocol. Now, is there a chance that he would be okay by September 10th? Very, very much so. Very much so that there's a chance. Not trying to be a doctor here. First and foremost, and obviously, this does impact a guy who stood out as much as anybody in the preseason games. Next to JSN, Jake Bobo, the undrafted free agent out of UCLA. Now, is he going to help in the slot? Could. I mean, teams have used big slots before, right? But certainly as far as a role goes and contributing, Jake Bobo just got more important in this roster and solidified even more his spot on this roster. As if, I said yesterday on the show, I think he's made the team. And then there's some guys on the roster that were really on the outside looking in, on the bubble, fighting to make the team, that have an opportunity now. If the Seahawks have to start the season with D. Eskridge and JSN on the injured list or suspended list for Eskridge, and possibly Cade Johnson not getting back in time. Matt Landers, the kid out of Arkansas, another undrafted free agent, 6'4", 200, 4.3 speed. Made the play on the touchdown throw from Ehlers against the Vikings. But if you're looking for guys to fill JSN's role that are more like him, it would be more like Cade Johnson. How about Easop Winston Jr., the former WSU Cougar, had the touchdown from Drew Lock against the Vikings. He's got a groin thing, didn't suit up against the Cowboys. If he's healthy, I like his chances of fighting for a roster spot because he can play that slot, catches the ball well in traffic, good route runner. He's got a little something to him, and he can return kicks, which the Seahawks, JSN, I think on the depth chart, was the second punt returner. They had him in line to potentially do some return duty. Those are the main guys. The real dark horses, John Hall, the Division II player, had the blocked punt against the Cowboys. Tyjon Lindsey is interesting, the little 5'8" receiver out of Oregon State. Had a big play in the passing game against the Cowboys and also had a really nice punt return. Definitely fits that slot profile. If the Seahawks like his ability to return kicks, he could have a shot. Seahawks typically keep 5 wide receivers. They have kept 6. Obviously, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Are any of those other names locks at this point? I mentioned on the last show, I was having a debate on Twitter a week or so ago about somebody who thought Matt Landers really, really was going to make the roster. And I counted Derek Young as a lock. But after his performance against the Cowboys, I don't know. The Seahawks may need him. He may have made the roster by default at this point. But if they keep 5, you're talking DK, Tyler, Bobo. I think those are the 3 locks at this point. Then it's wide open. Some combination of Cody Thompson. I think in that case, Cody makes the team. And if he's healthy, I think it's Cade Johnson. With Landers, Lindsey, Winston kind of on the outside looking in. Certainly practice squad candidates, guys you can call up on game day. Or here's another thing to consider. What if they carry one less wide receiver to start the season and carry another tight end? Tyler Mabry's had a nice preseason. He really fits into that group. Good, solid, steady player. As much as tight ends are used in this offense, and a lot of times 2 on the field at a time, what about trying to fill some of that void by carrying another tight end? Seahawks added a tight end today. Sal Cannella, former Auburn player. He was undrafted in 2020, bounced around the league a little bit, landed with the Arlington Renegades of the USFL last year, was on that championship team, catching passes from Luis Perez, 6'5", 242 pounds, led the Renegades with 42 catches, 415 yards last year. In the championship game, had 4 catches for 71 yards and a 41-yard touchdown. Just a little more tight end depth there. Now, could they add from the outside? Of course they could. There will be options. We're cutting from 90 down to 53 this year, man. That's a huge, I keep saying it, I keep calling it another wave of free agency, but it really is. I don't know, how many players is that? Someone, quick, do some math. Right? 37 times 32. So there will be some receivers available. It's just so hard to pick up a receiver off the street, indoctrinate him into your playbook and your offense, and expect him to contribute right away. But what if there are some guys available who are familiar with the Seahawks system? 2 came to mind immediately. Cleveland Browns have a lot of good, interesting young talent at the wide receiver position. What if Marquise Goodwin doesn't make the roster? Well, he's not healthy. In fact, he's been on the non-football injury list since July, I think, with blood clots. So he's not an option. How about Penny Hart? Penny Hart signed with Atlanta this offseason, the long-time kind of fringy back end of the roster player for the Seahawks. Only has 1 catch for 9 yards with the Falcons. He's listed in the second wave on the Falcons depth chart, according to our lads. But he's hurt right now too. He's in concussion protocol, banged his head off the turf in their last game, and he's not available right now, which actually in a way might make it even tougher for him to make that team. That could be an option. Penny Hart gets out of the concussion protocol and gets waived. That might make a lot of sense. He could step right in and contribute week 1 if JSN is going to miss any time. In the long run, obviously, the Seahawks are going to be fine. JSN is going to be fine, as that one physical therapist said. And I think that receiver group is going to be fine. Even if they hadn't drafted Jaxon Smith-Njigba in the first round this year, I think people would still be feeling pretty good about the fact that DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are the lead dogs in that room. But it would just be a little bit of a gut punch after watching how dynamic, how good JSN has been throughout the offseason. Again, we'll know more possibly later today. Follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever, and I'll try to react to the news whenever it comes out. Just want to get my thoughts in on that and react to it, because certainly big news, not the kind of news that you want to hear at this point in training camp as you start to ramp up. You know, the Seahawks finished preseason Saturday morning, 10 o'clock Pacific time against Green Bay. I should be able to react to that game immediately after it, so look for that. A lot of stuff coming up on the show this week. So we had to reschedule. I know I said I had planned to be on the We Talk Seahawks podcast with Josh Edwards and friends in the UK on Monday. There were some technical difficulties on his end. We are rescheduled for tomorrow, so look for that. I'll tweet out the link once that's done. Adam's going to be joining me. We're scheduled to talk on Thursday. I'm going to do my final 53-man roster projection, get his reaction to that, his thoughts on that. Brian Nemhauser is going to hop on the show with me Sunday, I believe. We haven't nailed down a time yet, but really looking forward to talking to Brian. Been following what he does for a very long time. Met him in person recently, and really looking forward to getting him on the show and getting his thoughts That'll be after the final preseason game, what he thinks the roster is going to look like in some of those battles and how he thinks the team looks going into week one. And some big news, I talked about the other day, going to be part of the inaugural team at the new app, PSF Pro Sports Fan. You can download it now in the Apple App Store. Android, I'm not sure if it's out yet, should be released any day now. They're expecting it to be released at some point this week. And what this thing is, really excited about it. Sean Salisbury's the one of the brainchilds behind this thing and the president of the company. He got on our Zoom call on Thursday and got us all pumped up. I was ready to run through a brick wall after that. It's going to be an interactive experience for you, the fan. That's why it's called the Pro Sports Fan app. We'll do a midweek show, just checking in on where the Seahawks are and kind of reviewing and previewing. But it's the game day experience that's really going to be fun. Think Manning Cast, but on your phone, and you get to be involved. If you could call into the Manning Cast, it would be kind of like that, where we'll have real-time stats. We'll react to the game while we're watching the game together. And they told us we don't really have to hold back. We can really have some fun reacting to the game and really be ourselves and not have to mute ourselves. But here's the best part is they're pairing us up. So there'll be 2 teams for each team, so that we're not expected to do all 17 games. So I'll be doing 8 or 9. We haven't worked out the schedule yet, but paired up with my old friend and co-host from Field Goals, Dana O'Gorman, is going to be joining me. We're getting the band back together. We're going to call it Seahawks Unfiltered with Dan and Dana on PSF, the Pro Sports Fan app. So that official announcement from PSF should be coming any moment now. I'll certainly retweet that on Twitter. But really looking forward to that. If you've listened to Dana and I, the chemistry we have and how much we like working together. And it'll be a lot of fun in a much more free-flowing, kind of relaxed atmosphere to actually react to games. It's going to be a lot of fun. So download the app. It's going to be free. They've told us for the first couple of months of the season, probably. And then once it does become a subscriber platform, it'll be very, very affordable. As Sean Salisbury himself said, it will cost less than a cup of coffee. So check it out. It's already live, right? So you can get into chat rooms. There's other sports in there. There are some baseball chat rooms that are actually doing some of this stuff during the games. And there's already a Seahawks fan chat room where you'll see me and Dana in there, and we can post links and we can react to news and things like that. So get in there, play around with it, try it out. Go to YouTube, type in PSF app, and it'll kind of have some tutorials there on how to work your way around through it. But really looking forward to it and the potential of that. And I'm glad to be a part of it. Follow me at Seahawks Forever on Twitter. And again, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Until next time, forever and always, go Hawks. Thanks for listening, you guys.